السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
حياك الله دكتور حسام، حالك؟
أهلا أبو عاصم، كيف حالك؟
مالك؟
تمام الحمد لله، شو أخبارك؟
أمورك تمام إن شاء الله؟
والله الحمد لله رب العالمين، كيف أمورك أنت؟
أتوقع الجماهير يعني موجودة في قطر لكن حيجوا إن شاء الله، دونت وري.
أنت بالجامعة لسه؟
أنا لا، روحت ورجعت على الجامعة، البيت قريب يعني.
الله يعطيك العافية.
كيف أمورك؟
والله تمام الحمد لله، أنت شو أخبارك؟ كيف أمورك؟
الله يسلمك، الله يبارك فيك. خليني أوقف الريكوردينج. طيب، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Welcome everyone in today's webinar with our special guest, Dr. Husam Arman. Today's lecture is about innovation for education in new perspectives, and the webinar, or this webinar, will address the education challenge in the context of the national innovation system and how the education system can empower students to be creative, which is an essential survival skill in the Industrial Revolution 4.0. Our speaker today or tonight is Dr. Husam Arman. He's currently a research specialist at Kuwait Institute for scientific research. He has led projects in technology, R&D, National Innovation System, SME development. Dr. Husam Arman has a PhD from the University of Nottingham in technology and innovation. So, Dr. Husam, welcome and thank you for accepting our invitation and giving us this valuable time. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Amar. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everybody. First, I would like to thank you for inviting me today to share with you new perspectives, or maybe different perspectives, about education and innovation. It's a subject that's very close to my heart. Education and innovation, so I put it together in the title, and I hope that you will find it of interest. I'm going to share my screen. I guess you can see the full screen now, right?
Yes.
The outline of my presentation today, basically after the introduction, we'll look at the concept of national innovation system. Basically, we'll try to look at education in the context of national innovation system and how it does relate to other actors. And in this part, we'll look at the big picture, if you like. And then we'll look at another perspective, which is the learning ecosystem. And then how can we integrate creative thinking as part of the education process at different levels. And then I'll conclude with, I call it a useful approach, which is the design thinking concept. Here we'll talk about micro aspect of the issue that we are discussing today. This title I wrote, Formula to Achieve Rapid and Sustained Growth. This is something that at the macro level, most countries are now trying to achieve this objective. Colleagues from Harvard, Danny Roderick and Macmillan put a nice framework for countries to basically consider in achieving this objective. It's very straightforward 2D matrix, if you like. The first part is what they call structural transformation, which is basically the industrialization, moving from low value added sectors to high value added sectors. And the other dimension is investing in fundamentals, what they call. And fundamentals here, we're basically talking about mainly the human capital and institutions, developing institutions. And when we talk about human capital, the key aspect here is education. They found that the countries who are slow in structural transformation and low in structure and transformation. They're not doing very well in this. And also in fundamentals, and like we said, in education, usually they don't have a growth, stagnation. They are usually in stagnation. There's a lot of countries in this aspect. I'm not going to mention any. Now, if countries invest in education and fundamentals in general, but at the same time, they don't invest in industrialization, usually you get an economic growth, which is good, but usually it's slow and it takes ages to achieve results. An example of this situation, of this squad, if you like, the matrix, is Botswana. Botswana, it's very interesting case to consider because they have found diamond in the 60s, I think. It was huge resources that they managed very well. So if you are interested, you can read about the case. It's documented in different, cross-country studies about the development in this area. If you don't like to read the history and books related to such events, you can watch the movie called A United Kingdom, which talks about, it's a movie, but at least it gives you an idea about how they did the transformation, especially towards the end. Now, the third quadrant is basically when you do a quick industrialization, but you don't invest a lot in education and human capital. In this strategy, usually you get episodic growth, which is basically a growth that is not sustainable. And that's an example of this. Several countries. One is now, the recent one is Vietnam. Ghana, Nigeria, and Brazil are basically moving between different quadrants, but Vietnam is currently doing very well in terms of industrializations. As even China now is moving their factories to Vietnam. But the problem is investment in fundamental is very low. That's why it's not expected to sustain their economy. The stars, if you like, which is the quadrant 4, which is basically achieving rapid and sustainable growth. These countries, these are the very good examples of this quadrant where they have achieved quick, which is basically industrialization, but also sustained economic growth, where they work very hard on the structural transformation, industrialization, and investing in fundamental. The countries like South Korea, Taiwan, and Singapore, which are basically usually they refer to them as the Asian territories, because they managed to within 20 years with different strategies, but these two aspects that they have worked on. Now, what distinguished these three countries, how they managed, this is what happened now, how they managed to do this quick industrialization and the improvement in the fundamentals. It's a concept called National Innovation System. And I studied these three countries, and I published like a month ago a paper that basically summarized how each country did it basically, but using different approach, but all of them, they have designed and implemented an effective national innovation system. Now, as you can see, this figure looks lots of different arrows and like elements. I would like to only focus on these three elements. In other models, they call it triple helix model. I'm not sure if you heard this concept before, which is basically the three main actors, they call them. The first one, which is this one, the industrial system, where basically we're talking about the industry. So we talk about large companies, we talk about mature, small and medium enterprises, and also the new companies, the startups. These are basically, this is one element or one actor, as they call it. And then the second one is the education and research, which is our concern today, especially in terms of education, as we are speaking to you or your university, I'm assuming. So we have the higher education and research. We have also the public sector research, like I'm working Kuwait Institute for Certificate. We are a national lab. What we do is only research. And also, of course, the professional education and training in general, which happens at different levels. These are the most important two actors, but of course, you need the facilitation, which is basically the political system, the third actor. Talk about the government, governance, and the research, technology, and development policies. All the different policies and programs that facilitate the relationship between the industry and the academia. As you know, innovation, although we usually, when we talk about innovation, we remember, Apple, Microsoft, before it was like GM and all these companies who are very successful, very innovative. But the truth is, it's not just about the firms. Innovation does not happen at the firms, although they are usually very clever in grabbing opportunities. In one interesting book called The Entrepreneurial State for Mariana Mazzucato, I think, she dedicated a chapter for the iPhone, and she identified 12 key technologies that were basically enabling technologies where Apple managed to use basically to come up with this very innovative product, which basically changed, made radical changes in the technology landscape. And I'm sure all of us now all use smartphones and all these benefits that we have attributed to this invention. So she identified, I read this book like a long time ago. She identified all the different research outputs that were generated using public money, as she said. So basically the universities, the research centers who developed these invention, and Apple basically managed to commercialize these. Of course, they did a lot of effort, but I mean, the source of the innovation, if you like, was coming from the public. That's the reality. Is this system? When we say system, literally system means different components interacting with each other. That's why here, as you can see, the error is very important. You can work on the industry with using industrial policy, technology programs. You can also work on education and building state-of-the-art curriculums. And also you can do a lot of laws and regulations, policies. But if all these elements do not interact, it will not work. So there is a need to work on the elements, building these elements or these actors, if you like, and also the relationship between these different elements. Now let's look at the university, because this is our main concern today. I'm an industrial engineer. We like to look at things in terms of input versus output. I don't know if I guess most of the participants here from the architecture department. Basically, when we look at any system, usually we look at input versus output. We convert the inputs into output. Usually, it's in physical terminology, it's easier to look at. For example, if you are making plastic bottles, I use the pellets, plastic pellets. I use injection molding as a process, and then I get the bottle. Now, in considering the university as a function, we look at financial resources, human resources, facilities, and laboratories in terms of inputs. And when it comes to output, where the first and most important output is human capital, which is basically our product is the graduate key, in addition to the knowledge of course. But the main aspect is the human capital. Also, the research products in terms of application, patents, spin-off companies and inventions, and also services for the community, which is very important in terms of form of consultancy or collaboration projects. But I would like to focus today on the human capital aspect, which I mentioned in If you remember the first slide when I talked about the matrix, the fundamentals, we talked about human capital and transformation, structural transformation to industrialization. Now, not just because of this aspect, we're talking about human capital, we also look at it as multidimensional. I mean, when we talk about graduate, we would like to produce, if you use this term, graduates who are creative, who are innovative, who can contribute to the national innovation system, if we go back to this one. So when we talk about creative graduates, these graduates will go to the industry, the first one. They will work in large firms or established SMEs, or they may create their own companies. Or they could go to universities, be like a professor like yourselves, or work in the government. So if we have these creative people scattered everywhere as part of national, you can imagine the benefits that we can reap from these individuals. That's why it's very important to have creative, innovative graduates. Now, linking this to the future, World Economic Forums, they have a project called the Future of Jobs. They generate this report regularly. I use this slide where they talk about the top 10 skills that individuals need in the fourth industrial revolution, what they call Industry 4. In 2015, they asked HR executives and managers who are responsible for recruitment and CEOs, and also in 2020 also they asked them. And as you can see, there are 10 top skills. You can see the shift, the change. I would like to look at 2020. If we look at 2020, if we look at the top 3, we can see complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity. Like my interest is creativity, which was in 2015 number 10. But now with time, with the fourth industrial revolution happening and improving, and they can see they have realized that in the future, the AI, the artificial intelligence, will take over a lot of jobs. There's a lot of change that will happen. What the workers are doing, especially the low-skilled workers, a lot of their jobs will be displaced. Basically, those who do routine works, and now they start talking about the displacement of jobs, not just the low skills, even the high skills. So, what are the skills that they thought would be basically immune, if you like, from these challenges? Of course, I mean, when we talk about these skills, we're talking about cross sectors. So, people who are working in AI and data analysis and cloud computing and all these trendy areas. Of course, there is a high need for these for people who have these skills. But again, if you work in other sectors, you need to have these skills. And here, creativity is number 3. I think if they do again the survey, it will be number 1. But if it's not number 1, creativity for me means different dimension, and that's actually in the literature. There is 2 main aspects. One is the divergent aspect, and one is the convergent aspect. If you look at the divergent aspect, complex problem solving concept needs this type of thinking very much. When we talk about critical thinking, we talk about the convergent part of creativity, where we look at the judgment and the evaluation. Before that, let me just try to hear from you a bit about creativity. I know we always talk about creativity and innovation, and I already mentioned creativity and innovation. Sometimes they are used interchangeably. I would like to ask you to give me an idea about what you think when you think about creativity, regardless of what you read in literatures here and there. What does the creativity means to you, and what innovation means to you, in a very, very short sentence? I can hear you by talking, or if you want to write in the chat, that's fine. Anybody would like to share with us what he thinks of creativity or innovation or both?
سؤال صعب يعني, difficult question. Now translation in Arabic, innovation is إبداع, صح? Creativity is
هو صح. creativity إبداع وinnovation ابتكار، يعني هذا اللي أكثر شيء صار في إجماع عليها، بس الناس لسه still they mix and match. أنا شايف في Q&A، أنا شوي زوم مش كثير familiar فيه. That's excellent, Ryan. This is actually at the core of what we are, the core message, micro message of today's presentation is the focusing creativity, because it does actually differentiate human from machine. Now, the creativity is basically coming up with a new idea, usually novel idea and useful idea. That's basically, in a very simplistic way, defining creativity is to come up with a novel and useful idea. Fatma, excellent. That's exactly the difference between creativity and innovation. So creativity coming up with a novel and useful idea. Innovation is implementing these ideas. Now that's the very generic differentiation between these two concepts. Now, of course, when you talk to an economist or a business person, he will tell you innovation. He will count innovation when basically economist, let's say, when the first transaction happened, and that's Freeman, one of the very first people who wrote about innovation. Then this becomes innovation. So he believes that it's in the market, so it has been implemented. But now this definition has evolved with OECD, Oslo Manual, and other contribution, that it's not just about the market. So they have distinguished between product innovation, process innovation, marketing innovation, and organization innovation. So even if you come up with a new design, if you come up with a new method, even at work, and you implemented this, then this is considered innovation. And that's one aspect. But there's another aspect, which is the levels of innovation. There is the first level, which is basically innovating at the enterprise level. So basically, you've come up with something new and you have implemented it, and it's the first time for you to do it at your organization. Outside, they have done it, but you've never been able to do it. Now you can. So it's considered innovation, which is the first level. The second level is to create something new to your industry. So the whole industry has never done this. You have managed to do it, or at the national level, if you like. This is the second level. The third level is to come up with an innovation that is new to the world. So nobody has ever done this before. So as you can see, there is it's not straight forward. There are a lot of different perspectives, but in a nutshell, Fatima put it very nicely when she basically differentiated between creativity and innovation. Creativity to come up with something new and useful. Usually these two things are important. And when you implement this, then that's basically innovation. Now here, here we're talking about creativity. So we're talking about this important skill that our graduates, wherever they go, they're always able to come up with new, original, novel, and useful ideas that can add value and contribute to the organization they're working for, or they themselves can establish new firms, new startups based on the ideas that they have come up with. Which, as I said, is not necessarily something completely new. They can come up with a new business model that can basically be very successful. Let me share with you a very interesting story, which George Land mentioned in one of his TED talks. Basically, he said that one time, long time ago, NASA came to him and asked him to basically develop a tool, management tool, to do an assessment, basically for their engineers. They wanted to basically select the most creative engineers, also for recruitment purposes. So basically, he said he developed with his team this assessment tool, the creativity assessment tool, and they used it, and the project was basically completed. Later on, this is George Land. He thought of using this instrument that he has developed to basically do a research project looking at kids. So what he did basically, he used a sample of kids who are 5 years old, and he basically used this tool to assess their creativity, basically, to see like how they can are able to come up with with ideas, how they think about different things in terms of innovative. There is different measures that they look at usually. They look at the frequency, they look at the originality, they look at flexibility, and other. There is a very well-known creative researcher, Florence, who developed such tools. What do you think? I would like to ask you again. We're trying to be to make it an interactive. I told Dr. Omar. I know it's difficult with virtual. I wish I was able to come and be with you. It would be more fun. But let's use what we have in terms of technology. What do you think? What was the percentage of the kids who are creative in his sample? Out of 100%. So give me like a percentage. You can write it. You can write this in the question and answer, or in the chat, or.
I received some many notes that the chat for some reason doesn't work, so you can write in the Q&A zone. No issue.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Dr. Omar. Okay, Osama said 40%. Mini Zawad. We'll do like an auction. Who would like to top up the number? Increase. Okay, 45%. 70%. Mumtaz. I can see the number is getting higher and then lower. 30%. No, it's more than 70%. Any wild guess? We need like somebody who's brave enough to give us a very high number. More than 70%. That's correct. It was 98%. Imagine the 89% of the kids are not just creative, highly creative. Now, what he did, you know, they do this study like Harvard and this, where they basically follow the participants, and he again did the same test on the same kids when they became 10 years old. So after 5 years, now, what happened to the creativity? What do you think, the percentage? Did it go up? No, I will tell you it went down. But now, what's the new percentage? Yes, it did decrease. What's the new percentage, you guess? Any guess? It went down from 98 to 70, Ahmed. Sorry, Hassan. 75, Ahmed, about 70%. Unfortunately, it went down to 30%. Imagine 10 years old, 30%, 10 years old. So we're talking about year school year 4, about year 4 or year 5. Okay. Now, he again followed these kids when they became 15 years old. I didn't put this in my slide because I couldn't find a picture which has 4 people basically. So it dropped to 12%. And then he started looking at not the same individuals, different, and did it many times with different individuals, with adults basically. Now, this is what I want you to, this is the most important figure that I would like to hear from you. What was the percentage of the adults who were highly creative? So it dropped again, I can tell you. It was 98, 30, 12%, and now it went even down. So less than 12%. Zero. Junaid. 5%. 2%. صح. We have a winner. عارف, sorry, Muhammad Al-Arif, he got it right. It was 2%. Imagine the percentage went to 2% of individuals who are highly creative. Now, the big question is, why did this happen? Thank you, Hamza. Also, Hamza put 13 and then 2%. You got it right. So, you have 2 winners. Now, why do you think this happens? I said this happened because it is still happening. Not just happened a long time ago. In what age? These are adults, basically. The sample that he did with adults, and he said he did it like with like, yeah, thousands of people, and he kept doing it to see like maybe the first time there was something wrong, but he said he kept doing it and got the same results more or less. But do you know? What do you think? Why? What happens to us? Interesting. So with brain development, this is interesting perspective. I think teenage is the beginning of a new lifestyle. It's a good hinders. Interesting, Hamza. Yeah, very good answers actually, because basically when we become adults, I mean before, let's talk about the stage before. What we do, we basically go to school. Kids go to school and they continue in the education system, which has been designed long time ago when the industrial revolution happened, the second industrial revolution, and the factories and mass production. They basically wanted to educate as much as they can, so they started having this system, which is it's like standardization, conformity, as Sir Ken Robinson described in his book Out of Our Minds, where he talks about creativity. I'm sure you heard of him. He did the TED talk. How he said do schools kill creativity? It was the most watched TED talk. That's basically his theory as well. That's what happened to us. Is out to our kids when they go to school, they become structured. The too many students. There's exam. You need to practice for the exam, etc. And then you carry on. You go to university. You go to work. There's always, these boundaries that we need to stick to. I'm going to tell you another story, which is a personal story. One time, I have 2 kids, Adam and Yasmin. we were sitting in the room next to them. We can hear them, and we heard Yasmin talking to Adam, and she's basically saying "ما تطلع برا," which I have here in this drawing. For those who can't understand Arabic, "ما تطلع برا," basically they're doing coloring in. They were 3 years old in the nursery, pre-KG, and they gave them like basically shapes that they coloring in. And Yasmin was saying, "ما تطلع برا," don't go beyond the boundaries, don't go beyond the frame that they put, so you just coloring inside the shape. So my wife was sitting next to me, and she's primary teacher, qualified primary teacher, and she said to me, this very simple instruction that they seem to be listening to in the nursery kills creativity. So basically, these kids who started, imagine 3 years old, 4 years, 5 years, they started basically stopping them from thinking freely, having, and this is, of course, one of the issues that hinder creativity. This drawing, as you can see, I put the source here. It's from this blog, stline.blogspot.com. Although the drawing is not very great, but there are good ideas, so I recommend you to go and check out this post. It's for Husam Arman, which is me. My name in Arabic, Husam Arman, of course, but Arman because we don't have Arabic, we don't have in English ta'in. Okay, now let's look at we looked at the national innovation perspective, which is the macro aspect of it. Now let's look at the other perspective, which is the learning ecosystem. When we talk about learner, usually we look at the education system, university or schools, and we ignore a lot of other factors that's happening, and the learner, the students interacting with at the different levels of education. We have the parents, we have the labor market, the industry, which a lot of industries are not happy with the graduates. They think, according to Kaplan, who wrote a very interesting book called The Case Against Education, and he criticized education in the USA, and some other researchers before him. He says, for the industry, for companies, they look at the university as a signal. This is the concept that they use. Signaling is basically this student stayed in this place for 4 years. He was going to lectures. He learned the basic. He can, do the basic skills. When he comes, we will train him. We will give him all the, the necessary skills. But at least we get a graduate because we know that this guy is committed, basically. Otherwise, we don't need to get like this. If there's a guarantee that a person is committed and he's willing to learn, and then we can get him from the street. We don't need to get the graduate. So that's the perspective of the level. Now, if we are isolated, we're not linked at the university to the labor market, we would not be able to see what are the needs. The civil society, of course, the policymakers, the media now is very important. With the social media now, there is like the students are studying at the same time. They have their mobile next to them. Some of them they will put their mobile in front of their basically keyboard. So all these factors, challenges, and also opportunities that need to be managed to produce a lifelong learner. So that's an important concept of basically again having different players working together to come up with a final product with the lifelong. Now, the other aspect that I would like to share with you, or the other perspective, if you like, is now this creative thinking is very important. Now, unfortunately, when we talk about when you talk to parents, for example, how your kids are doing, if they're doing good in math or science or these subjects, they usually are happy. If you tell them, they didn't score very well in creativity. I don't think they will mind because at the end of the day, they need to finish the G or the high level, whatever, A level, and that's what matters to pass these stages. But as you can see, the future is the creativity skills. So if they don't score good in creativity, we need to catch up and try to work on this. This website, Creativity and Education, it's established by a very pioneer researchers who are specialized in creativity research. One of them is Cindy Bernard. I would recommend you to look at this website, and they have nice guidelines how to basically integrate creativity in the learning, in the education. University, middle and high school, elementary school, preschool, even at home. It's very interesting and very helpful. They also have their own podcast. Sometimes I look at it. It's very useful for us as educators to get into this type of research and see what type of tools that we can use, because the best way or the transitional way is to start integrating creativity within the module. Whatever we teach, and we look at this in a minute how we can do this, is to introduce creativity. Then we can move to actually the next phase. Cindy Bernard, I just mentioned a minute ago, developed with her colleague Smith what they call 5-point star model. It's basically how to do it for educators, universities, schools, how they basically can integrate this. The first thing, he said that you need to understand creativity, because as you know, we have discussed at the beginning, creativity has different perspective, different dimensions. So if there is no consensus in the institution about what we mean by creativity, people have different perspective, we can't make progress in this aspect. So that's important to basically make sure that there's common understanding of creativity. The second step is where educators recognize their own creativity. If you don't have it, it's difficult to pass. So it's important to work with the staff. And then the third step is looking at the environment, developing a creative environment. And when we talk about environment here, we talk about physical aspect of the place, like now Google and all these innovative companies, they make the environment very conducive for creativity. The same for the university. We can't just stick to the same rows of students sitting down and we are throwing information. This does not work anymore. So this is one part, but the other part of the environment, basically, again, conducive environment, an environment where the students are able to cross the boundaries, challenge the theories, conventional wisdom. They are free to express themselves. They are able the system is able to feed their curiosity, and so on. The fourth step is integrating creativity into content delivery, which is basically whatever the course you teach, you choose the creativity skills, and you basically induce as part of your subject, whatever you are teaching. And the fourth stage, if you like, is basically, in addition to integrating it into the content, but also to have standalone courses and classes where kids learn creativity and different tools and techniques that can help them to basically come up with new ideas and so building their capabilities, but also there is tools that basically they can learn that they can use in their workplace. These are just examples of creative thinking skills that can be used in curriculum that they have developed this institute. My favorite is curiosity. I believe curiosity, and it's one of the 7 steps that Michael Blank, in his famous book, Thinking Like Leonardo da Vinci, How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci, is the first skill that he looks at. And that's what happened to us. I mean, I'm sure you have kids, if you just consider this aspect, curiosity, you can see the big difference between the kids, the small, and as we age, our curiosity goes down, which is the most important thing in creativity. While if you have a small children, I'm sure they're always asking why, how this works, what's happening. But it's something that they're always interested to know. But in us, and when we become adults, it's usually black books. You get in the car, you switch on, you drive, you don't even think about how this engine works, how the ignition happens, how the piston moves. We're usually not interested. While the kids, they're always interested. They're always curious to learn. So sometimes we need to basically go back to our habit of the hunger of learning. The last concept that I would like to conclude my presentation, which is the final perspective, which is at a micro level. I went from micro, now going down to micro level, which is the concept of design thinking, which was developed by Idea Company, which is a very famous design company. They developed the concept of the laptop that you fold up a basic computer. They invented the mouse, very pioneer company. They basically make designs for other companies. This simple methodologies that they consider, basically they talk about before you develop a design or a product, you need to go through this step. The first step, which is the most important step, is that empathize, which is basically using not sympathy, empathy, which is basically putting yourself in the user's shoes and try to understand his concern, his challenges, and then define the problem. And that's what distinguishes this process, is that usually engineers like they take their time in the problem definition, but they like to jump quickly to the solutions. Here, in this approach, you have to do brainstorming and a lot of like analysis and interviews just to understand the problem and select the root cause of the problem and work on, and then you move on to the solution. So there is divergent thinking in the problem stage, and then convergent thinking at the problem stage, and then you do again divergent thinking, which is coming up with different solutions, which is the ideation stage before you go to the prototype. Now, this concept that we can use in education, how can we use it? We already have this well-established concept, which is project-based learning. I'm sure, I mean, in architecture, this is something very common, that most of the work that you do is project, but also there is a need to introduce this in all the different disciplines. I mean, I taught in the university, I taught in the UK and in Palestine. These two papers, conference paper that I've developed, although I'm not into basically research in education, but it was fascinating how can you transform a module, a course, if you convert it to project-based learning, where most of the learning happens, which is the concept of learner-centered approach. It's about the learner. Remember this caricature that I showed where the teacher is like basically, pushing the information, the kids trying to resist. Here is the students are basically the center of the process. They learn, they go, they formulate a project, they go, they do interviews, they speak to the people what basically need to be done, and then they learn the theory that will help them to basically develop solutions. These solutions can be, in our case, industrial engineering, we look at the systems and product, but in other disciplines can be a theory, can be like services, can be like concepts, but the idea is basically to convert these type of topics and the subjects into project-based learning, where they can learn negotiation, conflict resolution, problem solving, creativity, all the skills that we mentioned when we talked about the slide in the fourth industrial revolution. These skills can be basically learned as part of while they are learning the concept. For example, in this in the UK, in Nottingham University, when I taught this course, basically generating energy from waves, they had to do this product, but they needed to learn about geese. So they go back, they learn about geese. I will give lectures about the gaps that they need to learn that will help them in their project. With this, I conclude my presentation, and here I put the summary of the key concept that I tried to address and share with you. The first is basically we need to empower creative individuals. This is very important. And when we talk about students, they are the cream. They are they will graduate, and as I said before, They work in different areas. The second concept, which is designing effective national innovation system and learning ecosystem. And the third approach, which is the design thinking approach, which I just presented a minute ago. With this, I conclude my presentation, and I thank you very much for your participation and for your listening, and I'm very happy to receive any comments, any questions. Thank you. المايك عندك دكتور عمر.
حياك الله دكتور حسام, مشكور. Thank you very much for this interesting talk. And I would like to thank also my colleagues and my students and our guests from outside KFUPM for joining us tonight. We have 3 minutes. If any of you have a question, the floor is open. Okay, people are thanking you, Dr. Husam, and the chat. Shukran, ya'tik al-afiyah. Thank you for your time, Doctor. Thank you very much. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. Thank you very much for this lovely session. Okay, so any question? Okay. طيب. Thank you indeed, Dr. Husam, for this out-of-the-box seminar. We, طبعا, in the Department of Architecture, we are very keen to know about innovation and creativity in education, because our students keep working, and we don't have any reputation almost. They do, every one of them do different projects with different concepts. We change projects from year to year. So we are working on the base of continuous change and inducing new ideas all the way. So I think this lecture, inshallah, will be very, very useful for our students. So by this, our friends, we conclude our talk tonight. Our sincere thanks again to Dr. Husam for giving us this opportunity to benefit from his knowledge in the field. And thank you to our colleagues in KICS for organizing or helping us with the logistics in organizing this event. Thank you and have a nice night. Assalamu alaikum jami'an.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care, Dr. Husam. See you inshallah in future events.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
Salam.